is implementing at a really powerful 25-year scale. The work that DC has been doing for a long time with the leadership of the government, nonprofits, some of which are no longer around, the work of citizens here in this room and outside, enjoying all of our green efforts, everything makes a difference, and the opportunities are both incredible and incredibly challenging. I was, both gratified by the work in the South Bronx. We were able to bring Majora Carter to Marvin Gaye Park in the Watts Branch subwatershed 8 years or so ago when we revitalized that park in Washington, D.C., Ward 7. It and Ward 8, some of the poorest places in America. And the people in Flint and elsewhere struggle. And while we're in the metric or the thing I really want to continue to work on and figure out how to bridge is how do we make sure that, as Ms. McCartney said this morning, how do we make sure that everybody gets these benefits? Because we all, receive the benefits of water and we all deserve it, exactly.
I love to watch things like that because I find them so inspiring, and I think it's great to see what people are doing other places. But I also like to watch them because they give me ideas for things that we can be doing here. And there's a lot of things happening in this region that were touched on in the other regions in the film. And so that's very inspirational and also gives you the feeling that you can make it happen.
Okay. All right, great. And we have questions from the audience too. If you'd like to, just raise your hand and I'll get the mic over to you. But I'll keep asking until I see a hand. Michelle, number one, I guess I'll say here. EPA Michelle, maybe we'll do that one. EPA has taken a strong approach to encouraging green infrastructure, more recently. How does that drive the state, regional, local decisions and policies, or how should it?
Distraction.
Sorry.
The agency really has identified with the fact that what we need to work on, our infrastructure, it's expensive. And there are opportunities and ways to do it kind of more low tech. The white roof, that's pretty low tech. A good way for us to be able to look at things we can implement in the communities that would really make a benefit overall. What EPA has done is really worked on grant opportunities, education, policies, guidance, getting out there and really trying to work and partner with the communities to bring the resources out to start building these things. We have a green infrastructure website that has a lot of resources on there that looks at trying to make the case for using green solutions. And the big thing is really that it's not just one type of technology, it's really an integration of things. You heard in the video for Philadelphia, it was about staging things, about being able to know you're gonna clean a pipe or replace a pipe and be able to implement green solutions and technologies for that. So it really is about planning and being able to plan those things. And for communities and local governments to really use the resources they have available to them and the drivers for them. One of our big things are MS4 permits. That presents the opportunity, especially in Maryland with impervious surface reductions, to really look at green technologies and green solutions in order to manage stormwater where it is.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions? So what are the challenges do you think the county governments, communities, citizens face with green infrastructure? With developing policies and promoting it, installing these things. And I'll ask that from each of you actually. What are some of those? What do you feel that some of those challenges are?
I think challenges are getting citizen support for those things because it is a cost. There are rates that are impacted by it. I think in the video you saw for Philadelphia, they implemented a stormwater fee. And from that stormwater fee, that particular program, if you can do green technologies, green solutions, and manage your stormwater, you get a reduction on that fee. What better incentive than economics alone to kind of drive it? And I think that's one of the big challenges for local governments, communities. The other thing is having your infrastructure, having ordinances and redevelopment. I think I heard this morning in the session there was a green construction design or requirements that are going to kick in effect in Montgomery County. Great way to really drive the economy, drive the jobs, drive the market to have that home base here through that green construction regulation.
I would fully echo that. Certainly at a county level, the need for good regulations for waterways, green infrastructure, and building. You know, we have spent many, many generations building our cities and towns and buildings to get water as far away as possible because we thought that using petroleum to pump water uphill was a good way to go instead of, you know, working with what falls. And it's got some health benefits, obviously, but the more, I was struck by what Tom Lipton said and others, you know, the more we can connect ourselves and the congressman from South Bronx. We all are part of nature, and we are all the beneficiaries when there's more diversity of any sort. The more we can connect with the natural systems in the world, and the more we can bring them back with the mussels and the other great innovative filters and partners that we have, the better. So, you know, the regulations and then the markets, because businesses, we have set up in large measure an economy or an economic system that doesn't reward green, healthy living much at all. It, you know, benefits the opposite.
I think one of the biggest challenges is getting people to buy into these things. There's this misconception that green infrastructure is like mosquito breeding habitats and things like that. And I think that in order to make these programs work, you really have to make not just the public, but the business owners and all of the places you want to see these types of projects go in the ground that they can look just like anything else. They might cost a little bit more on the front end, but what you're going to get out of them makes up for that. So I think that that's one of the big issues is just getting public buy-in to these things. And I think also the job force is a huge issue as well. There's a whole lot of money that's going to have to be spent in the next decade, upwards of $10 billion in the metropolitan region to put green infrastructure projects into the ground, and there's not a workforce here to support that. And so making sure that we have people trained to do these types of jobs so that when they go in the ground, they're taken care of properly and they can be maintained is also a big issue.
Okay. Got like 3 of my questions in one spot there, so that was pretty good. I'm actually going to jump over to it unless we have another one. Okay, we got a hand up there. Okay.
Thanks. Are there any programs or projects that are going to go down there to solve some of those problems?
Absolutely, absolutely. Montgomery County has, as a county for the parts of Sligo Creek's subwatershed and the Northwest Branch subwatershed and the one further to the north that are part of the Anacostia watershed, incredible regulatory support and financial incentives to support these kinds of green infrastructure improvements to clean the water and the county. In the city of Takoma, I can't speak to that specifically. I know that they are supportive of it. And I know from this morning, from being here, the energy emphasis and the sustainability efforts and their work to preserve the tree canopy all makes a difference. Friends of Sligo Creek is the big proponent of there, and they have a table outside.
Yeah, we have our pleasure of having our director here too. She can address this. Yeah.
So my name is Lisa Felt again, and just 3 blocks down from here in Sligo Creek, that was largely led by Friends of the Sligo Creek working with my department. We have a Green Streets program that is incredible, and it was the intersection working with the Department of Transportation when they were doing some road improvements and interfacing the green streets into that. And so if you get a chance, maybe not today, it's about 3 blocks from here just to walk and see it, and it's a really successful program, and we are beginning to implement that program elsewhere in the county as well in different communities. We do a lot of restoration work around our watersheds, including the Anacostia. We have a bunch of projects around the Anacostia that we do. But one of the reasons why I felt really strongly that I wanted to have this panel is we want to continue to explore ways to increase green infrastructure in Montgomery County, and it doesn't go without its challenges. I do think public education is key, community buy-in and community involvement is key, not only in helping design the project, but then making sure that it's continued to be maintained, because they're gardens in the final hour, and that's really important that they're maintained correctly. We have a very active maintenance program in the county where we actually come and deal with big maintenance, getting trash out of there that spills in and all that kind of stuff. But it really does take a community. So if you haven't been on our website, My Green Montgomery has a whole bunch of information for you. And if you're interested at your community level, please contact Ryan Zerby, who's here, and we can help you out. But I'm really thrilled that we're continuing to be a leader, and we need to continue moving forward in this.
Thank you.
If I can just put in a quick plug for the watershed group, since we are throwing some
It's
of
on
them
my
out
list.
there. So my job, I actually am the Anacostia Watershed Manager at the Council of Governments, and part of my job involves interacting with all of these smaller sub-watershed groups like Friends of Sligo Creek. And so no matter where you live in the watershed, there is most likely a group of concerned citizens that you can get engaged with. And I think that that's the best place for a lot of people to start. Search out where they are when they meet, and they do all sorts of things, not just things that are related to green infrastructure and trash cleanup, but birding and native plants and all sorts of things like that. So I would say look into that if you're trying to get engaged in what's happening environmentally in your community.
Thanks. Kathy?
Kathleen, yes.
Kathleen? Sorry.
I'm with Friends of Sligo Creek. I'm a volunteer. We have a program actually with DEP, Chesapeake Bay Trust. It's a grant that they've been given to water watchdogs. It's completely community-based. It started in Section 5 in front of my house with my neighbor who does water reporting on pollution she sites on the street and in the creek. And if you come to Friends of Sligo Creek, you can get a card about how to report the pollution. It's an email reporting system, and then the experts in water quality come out and check the site and educate people about what they can do to not put bad things in the stormwater system. We're also having a bike ride on June 12th. It's a pilot. I just wanted to put a plug for that. But my ask to you as a panel, one of the challenges I see is that some of the construction crews, WSSC, even new home development that goes in to concentrate smart growth around new development, especially where I live by Mrs. K's tall house in downtown Silver Spring, more and more impervious surfaces are going in, more and more infrastructure for sewage and other things are going in under our streets. They're constantly being dug up, and a lot of that pollutant, the dirt, the mud, the road dirt, everything goes into the creek and washes down Sligo and into the Anacostia. We see it on a regular basis. And I think that one ask I could make is that you work with the construction teams. These subcontractors are not following best practices, and they hose down the street and wash everything into the creek. And they really need to be properly trained and fined, and we're constantly calling inspectors, and it's always a problem. We can't get ahead of it. But I think education could really make a big headway in that regard. So that's my ask, if you can work through your channels to do that. These people need better training.
All right. Thank you. That's a question, but all right. So
There's at least one civil engineering firm represented here. Kathy, two rows in front of you. If you have questions. Nandlal Gavaria from Arya Civil Engineering is here. And you're absolutely right. I mean, infrastructure, right? We have spent several hundred years building infrastructure, and here locally less. Silver Spring, right, named after the springs. Rachel Carson, Silent Spring. And yet we've built infrastructure in DC, New York, Philadelphia, and the major cities 100 years ago in DC's example. Some of the sewers are still wooden, and we're, following Boston to dig a big tunnel because at the time, the head of DC Water thought that, and his board and EPA thought, let's build a big gray tunnel. And they're trying to negotiate maybe for some other parts of the area, different green infrastructure solutions, and they've started testing them, and God bless them. May we all have more of that. And from a municipal regulatory policing perspective, it's often not on the top of their list, and they often don't have the funding for it. The maintenance piece, as Ms. Felt suggested, and you said, you know, these are gardens. This green infrastructure, we have forgotten how to take care of our trees in large part as a culture, as a people, as communities, because it's easier, cheaper, quicker, faster to, you know, pave it over. But it doesn't provide all the other benefits that green infrastructure does.
Just a plug for grant programs. EPA does have grant programs. One, I think there was a grant project here in Takoma Park. It's the G3 program, Green Streets, Green Jobs, Green Towns. And EPA every once in a while does an RFP, request for proposal, and they evaluate them and fund certain functions. And they can be anything from a design charrette, which brings community stakeholders together to talk about what the challenges are, and some design and implementation. There's also an urban waters grant program that a watershed associations can apply for as well. And that's additional funding for challenging efforts. And I think what you were referencing was a G3 program. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was going to say that's a great lead-in actually for one of the things I was going to mention. You know, for the Department of Environmental Protection in Montgomery County last year started their first grant program. That was through funds from the Water Quality Protection Charge. And getting back to one of the things that Gina McCarthy had said this morning, you know, what stays in Montgomery County doesn't stay in Montgomery County. So I'm hoping, I know that a lot of other jurisdictions have stormwater fees. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it'd be nice and encouraging these other areas to do that. So that was one of the mechanisms that gave us the ability to provide grants to nonprofits in our area to do watershed restoration and outreach projects. And Kathleen, you know, you're one of the recipients of that in your group. I see some more people, Friends of Cabin John, one of our watershed groups that received one of our grants, and they were able to hire Tina in the audience, their outreach coordinator. And it's just provide some of these resources that get people out there in the community and to do these projects. You know, we've been having cisterns being installed at homeowners associations and at faith-based organizations and things like that. And we're basically going on the next round of these things. So, you know, initially you do get some questions and concerns because obviously it is another thing to pay. We certainly have plenty of things to pay for, but you know, when it's really helping your community and helping your resources, your natural resources, it's you know, I think something that's a really good thing. So that actually brought me back to the grants and the Water Quality Protection Charge. You know, what do you, Michelle? I was going to ask you, what do you think is the importance of having such a utility fee like that in a municipality?
The fact that there is a rate structure there to help support these programs. In Philly's, I'm very familiar with Philly's program, having done a compliance audit with them. They do encourage private partners to implement green infrastructure through that rate reduction, which is a great incentive. I think you heard the gentleman from Newman Paper say that if it weren't for economics, he wouldn't have done it. And you know, that particular operation is kind of messy. Operation in the city. So, you know, being able to better manage their waste and manage the amount of water they're using, that's where the driver comes from, the economic driver. And just think if that stuff's not going into the treatment plant, you're using fewer chemicals to actually treat. So you can concentrate a little more. And then it's not going to go through the outfall. So those are great opportunities to help build the programs. Otherwise, you're further stressing your local governments to be able to do more with less. And then you don't see the robust programs that I saw today in Montgomery County and here in Takoma Park, looking at these organizations that are looking at organic gardening, organic lawns, and being able to be more sustainable. That's what those rates provide, sustainable opportunities to have a better community.
Great. Any questions? Okay. So I want to getting on to the community side of things. Michelle, we had, you know, you're working in the Anacostia, and you saw some of the work that was done there in the Bronx and in Philadelphia, really. You know, what are some of the success stories that you've seen there that you were familiar with? Not there, but in your experience for some of these
Anacostia.
in the Anacostia or in the James River, your former, that really escalated some of these projects and helped out the community.
I think that when you can get the relationship happening between the public and nonprofit organizations and local government, you can have a lot of things happen pretty quickly. There's a lot of people that are interested in these things and a lot of ways to get them done. Within the Anacostia, like I said, the small watershed groups are doing great things. They get out there, they get engaged. People want to hear from their neighbors. They don't want to hear from local government. And so there's great things happening with all of these homeowner programs where it doesn't matter if you live in the district or Prince George's or Montgomery County, all three watersheds within the Anacostia have homeowner programs where they will help you figure out if you want to put a rain garden in or a rain barrel or what project makes the most sense for your yard. And all of those programs offer you some sort of incentive-based system to help get those things put in the ground because they can be cumbersome in the economic sense of things. So I think those homeowner programs are great examples. And when you look at organizations in this area like the Anacostia Watershed Society and the Anacostia Riverkeeper, they're just out doing great things with education, with school kids and with adults and getting people out onto the river. I think with the Anacostia, that's the biggest thing. There's this misnomer that the river is still this horrible body of water, and it does still have problems. That's my job. That's why I'm here. It does have problems, but it is safe to get out on, and I think that making the connection with people that the river is getting better and that all of these things that we're doing is paramount to having it be a success. And so groups like that get folks out and enjoying their environment and learning about their environment and how what they do influences and impacts the river is really important.
Okay.
Those
I'll do
are
a
my
follow-up on that one, but so how do we get the people out on the river? I know we have a restoration plan for the Anacostia and, for practices and things like that. What would be some of the...
I think kids. Kids are the driving factor, right? Within the school system now, we have these required education elements, and every child has to have a meaningful watershed experience, and what that means varies depending on where you live. But, parents and adults they're hard nuts to crack. And I think that when you can get the children engaged, they're the ones that go home and tell mom and dad, and they say, I want to go out. We saw these trees. Let's go look at this. And so I think that that's one of the best ways to get people involved. Last summer, I went to one of the Anacostia Riverkeepers free Friday fishing events down at Diamond Teague Park, and it's just crazy. You see these kids that have never experienced that before, and they drag their mom and dad out there, and they're, just plunking little pieces of liver over the side of the dock and catching catfish, but it gets them engaged and it makes them want to go out and do more things. And I think that in society today, we're so caught up in this, TV and video game and cell phone and things that people don't get outside like they used to. My parents opened the door and they threw me out and they said, don't come back until dinner time, and that doesn't happen these days. So I really think children are the key to getting people engaged in what's going out there. But there's also not a shortage of programs in the area. No matter what your interest is, if it's the water itself or if it's fishing or birding or plants, there is some sort of group that you can hook up with that gets you out making those connections.
Thanks. Go ahead.
Triangulation, connecting the things that people are most interested in to whatever it is that we're talking about, so green infrastructure and healthy water. One of the things that we did in Marvin Gaye Park early on was we had social events, so we had fun. We had parties, we had, celebrations with food, with, a non-alcoholic drink, and had activities in the park where there had been shootings and drug use and the worst things. It was the worst park in DC 15 years ago. So the social component, and then triangulate some improvements like they were doing with the rehab in Philadelphia, a couple houses on a block. So you have an activity, so there's something that's done, there's some implementation that's part of that fun activity, and then it also is designed to make a difference. And if you can handle the economic piece of it, right, if you can provide an economic benefit to the people who are not watching the stormwater off their site, or for a woman in the neighborhood who is a great cook who can provide the food or take care of the kids, or a guy who's got a building company who can build these stormwater planters, and you can make those community connections so that there's more and more outreach, more and more connections between people, and it becomes more the norm. It happens.
Okay. Any other questions from the audience right now? I'll keep asking. Okay, go ahead. Kathleen, could you pass the microphone over? Thank you.
Water coming up out of the manholes in Bloomingdale and flooding people's houses. And that was part of the incentive for doing something about the water project. If you're familiar, can you tell me what's happening now with the DC water project, the stormwater project?
So I'm vaguely familiar of DC Water's project. So they had a consent decree, which is a judicial action that says you need to do these things for your system. Just generally enforcement action to say to a city, go figure out what your system is, and then develop a plan to address your system. So for that, what they're trying to do is build the capacity for their system to handle the water, and hence the tunnel projects. So sometimes those things can happen from the system itself, like a slug of something that goes down there. Sometimes it's about the overall volume. So I'm not familiar with that exact scenario, but that's just the generalization. The goal is that whatever they're capturing, they're pulling out. So if they're doing green infrastructure, they're trying to make sure that stormwater doesn't go into the system, and making upgrades, the gray infrastructure, the tunnels, the treatment plant upgrades, so that they can be able to treat the water that they do capture and have to treat before it goes out to the river in an overflow. And that's it. It's really a challenge for the larger cities that have the older infrastructure, like Philadelphia. Same thing, 100-year-old pipes. Some of their pipes actually were brick pipes, just brick and mortar. So they have to go in there, expensive endeavors to go back and replace those things. Costly, invasive to the communities, invasive to the traffic. So having these larger cities look at green solutions as alternatives helps to reduce its overall cost and leverages opportunities.
That's exactly right. And the consent decree was negotiated because community members and nonprofits said to the municipality at the time, the quasi-governmental entity, Water and Sewer Authority, you guys are making a mess of things, you got to clean it up. And the EPA stepped in and said, they're absolutely right. So the new director, George Hawkins, has been there for 3 or 4 years, and he's phenomenal. So there's going to be similar shifts in the green infrastructure here, and the promises have already been made financially, so they're not going to be they're building these tunnels that's going to handle 98% of the stormwater overflow problems. It's a quantity problem, and that's how they thought of it, at least.
And the green infrastructure helped to reduce the size. So it was still a necessary thing to do the tunnel. It just isn't as large, isn't as invasive, isn't as costly as it could have been.
If I can add to that, as part of reducing the size of one of the tunnels and putting green infrastructure in the Rock Creek sort of area, they're putting a lot of green infrastructure in with that. And one of the things they're also doing is a workforce development program related with that work. They've got a really aggressive timeline for what they want to do, and trying to address the fact that if these green infrastructure projects aren't properly put in the ground, and not just properly installed, but then properly maintained, then they're not doing what they were installed for, and then you have more problems than you started with. And so they are undertaking a very extensive workforce development training program where they will actually be working with underserved and unemployed citizens, getting them trained for things like installation, construction, and maintenance of these green infrastructure projects. And that's a requirement of what they're doing now. They have said that by the time they're done, 51% of all the work that's going to be done at those green infrastructure sites will be performed by residents of the District of Columbia. So they're also working to increase the local job force, which is, I think, a unique piece of their project now.
You're really good at hitting my questions. The job force and development questions, yeah. Any more from the audience right now? Because I'll keep asking if there's none. Well, you hit the nail on the job development part, which was good. I just had, going back to Michael here, for your particular expertise. So, how do you feel these practices are viewed from the eyes of the building community and designers and urban planners, things like that? What do you think? We didn't think about these things, several years ago, but now it really seems to be a big push. There was one thing in the video that didn't get to be added in. There was they had a portion of it. If you watch go to the website, you'll get a lot more pieces of this production. But there was an aspect of landscape designers and how they are connecting, and they're getting problems that they need to find solutions to and things like that. And then they're getting so excited about getting out into the workforce and starting these things. So what do you think is the opinion from the building community of putting these things? Are these kind of something that is sort of an annoyance, I guess you'd say, a change in their building practice, or is it something that's really being embraced by all these different levels or aspects?
It's a great, complicated question.
Yeah.
So from the real estate ownership, if you think about the large property owners in Montgomery County or any municipality, you think about their interests. You think about the regulatory environment and the laws that have been passed, both federal, national, and state and local, that they have to comply with. They're interested in predictability. They're interested in, hiring folks who know what they're doing, who know those regulations, who can deliver a product, a home, a road, a sidewalk, park, on time, on budget. The builders often have very narrow margins and pretty limited amount of time to learn new things. And there has been great work done. I mean, these are no-nonsense common things. It used to be that everybody knew how to, at least a family or community, right? There was a lot more local self-reliance. True here in Takoma Park. One of the reasons that people here are so resilient is they know a lot about a lot of things, and they collaborate. And same in the county. So it depends. There are high-level, very experienced, some of the best, architects, engineers in the county, certainly real estate owners. The tower companies have been interested in sustainability for 15 years since I moved to the area, down to people, carpenters, who know what they're doing here in Takoma Park and Montgomery County. John Spears from Sustainable Design Group outside, architect, gets it. But the majority of people, Michelle, to your earlier point, don't understand that if you want all the good things in life, and you don't want the bad things like mosquitoes, or you don't want a house that's going to fall apart in 20 or 30 or 40 years, or a water delivery system, that's going to fail. You need to both think about it holistically, and you need to think about it in ways that you can manage, and you need to work frickin' together. It's unbelievable in my experience how each of these vested interests, and especially those who aren't interested in health for all, I'll say health for all, green infrastructure, how committed they are or how blind they are. I know they don't want to hurt people, and yet that's the result of the system, most of the systems we've set up.
Okay.
With all the best intentions, we haven't thought it through very well.
Okay. All right, thank you. I have plenty more questions. I don't know if there's any more in the audience, but I know we have to cut off, unfortunately. And I think I'll have to here, but I'll ask one last question for each of you. If you had, seeing the film today, and basically in thinking about your job and what you're doing on a daily basis, and the environment that's near you, river, and just your community, if you had one message that you'd like the audience to walk away from today concerning green infrastructure and what we need to do, what would it be?
I think that my message would be there's this mindset that what one individual does doesn't matter, and I think that that's a big mistake. You have to think holistically and think on a block by perspective, and then a town by perspective. Every little thing that every individual does have an impact, and we have to get away from the mentality of but my part doesn't matter. I think it was the same when recycling started, right? Like, why does it matter if I recycle my bottles? I'm just one person. Well, the same is true with green infrastructure and water. Like, everybody's part is important, whether it's you put a practice in at your home, or you teach somebody about something, or you take your kids outside and they learn something about what's happening. Every individual can have an impact.
I would say, let us make connections, let us celebrate what's good, and let's make it happen soon.
Nice.
So I thought the video was wonderful. I think some of the challenges, though, are that we continue to show these larger urban cities that people don't connect as easily with, that I would like to see Montgomery County, Takoma Park highlighted, so that people can realize what's going on here can be transferable to what's going on there. Again, video was wonderful, but I think the connection needs to be more on a local level. So continue to be a part of these programs that are offered in the county. Continue to support the green infrastructure initiatives that are being driven here and the sustainability, and then tell that story so that you can be highlighted at a more national level.
Excellent lead-in. I was just talking to Lisa about that. So at being the outreach planner, I think that's one of the things we'll be working on also. Well, it's 2:20, and we have about 10 minutes before we have our next film showing, so we probably should have a little bit of a break, but I'll leave it open if there's any other questions from the audience, any other comments that we'd like to see, anything else that you'd like to say before we go. Feel free, and if not.
The one thing that I didn't say that I want to remember is that in terms of Montgomery County, it has taken a real leadership role in terms of the planning for the Western Agricultural Reserve, and they are managing a huge amount of green infrastructure. That's part of the county. And the parks and the streams and existing green infrastructure that's national, state, locally managed, owned, cared for, and all the yards, figuring out ways to have, our economy. There's a great thinker, Bill McDonough, they've been doing lots of work with the circular economy, and that's just good thinking, right? When you design something, you want to think about the whole cycle, not designing something to be thrown away. You want to then think about what happens with the thrown away stuff. So in terms of making connections between Takoma Park, Gaithersburg, Rockville, all the smaller zip code areas out to the western part of the county, thinking about the farmers who have all this agricultural waste that they don't know what to do with, and pollution and nutrients, and figuring out the value add to getting that packaged in a way that the cities or towns can use, and then likewise learn from them. I mean, there's a huge opportunity regionally and or county-wide to think about that connection, because we all need food, we all need, water, and it's got to, the cleaner it is, the healthier we'll be.
Great. All right. Thank you, guys. I'll give you a round of applause. All right. Thank you.